Minister Narendra Modi has today launched the Vadhavan port project in Maharashtra's Palgarh. The Maharashtra government first proposed the port in 1997, but the plan got shelved in 1997 after the local villagers protested. It was brought back on the table in 2015 under the Narendra Modi government's Sagarmala program, which aims to push a port-led economy approach, making major ports significant contributors to the country's GDP. The Vadhavan port will likely act as a gateway for the future international north-south transportation corridor and India-Middle East-Europe corridor. This is part of India's maritime hub push. Prior to this, India's largest transshipment port, the Vizhinham port, was inaugurated in Thiruvananthapuram, and 310-meter dry dock was also built at the Kochi shipyard to enhance shipbuilding and ship repair facility. And now the Indian ports and shipping industry play a vital role in sustaining growth in the country's trade and commerce, and is the 18th largest maritime country in the entire world. The global shipbuilding market size is valued at $145.43 billion in 2023. It is expected to grow even more. With shipbuilding being one of the biggest economies of the world, can India become a shipbuilding nation in the near future is the question we ask. Joining me on the telecast, let's take a look at a video that has been shared by the Government of India on the importance of this port.
Next monumental leap in maritime excellence. Presenting the Vardhavan mega port of the 21st century. Strategically located just 150 kilometers from Mumbai, the Vadhavan mega port is said to be completed in 2 transformative phases, which will provide state-of-the-art facilities with unmatched capabilities. By the end of its second phase, the Vadhavan mega port will handle an astounding 23.2 million TEUs. It will drive employment and empower communities by creating more than 12 lakh direct jobs and over 1 crore indirect jobs. Dedicated freight corridors, DFCs, will ensure faster, more efficient connectivity nationwide. And its location will provide direct connectivity to INSTC and IMEEC. Vadhavan is said to contribute over 1% to Maharashtra's GDP, aligning seamlessly with the state's $1 trillion vision for growth and prosperity.
Commodore Anil Jaisingh is the former Navy officer and the Vice President of the Indian Maritime Foundation, on the telecast with me. Thank you so much for joining us. And my first question, of course, the big monies are being spent over here, funds to the tune of about 80,000 crores that have been announced. And how does this impact India's maritime prowess across the globe?
Look, India is fundamentally a maritime nation. We are totally dependent on the sea for our economic sustenance, our energy security, and our larger well-being as a nation. 90% of our trade comes over the sea. 80% of our oil and gas comes over the sea. We are located in the center of the Indian Ocean. The Eastern Indian Ocean is as important to us as the Western Indian Ocean. Now, India already is almost on the verge of becoming a 4 trillion economy. In a few years, it's going to be a 5 trillion economy. By 2030, in the early part of the next decade, it's going to be a 10 trillion economy, and the targets for 2047 have already been identified and set. So you can imagine the exponential increase that there will be in our trade and our energy requirements once we reach these sizes of GDP. So therefore, any maritime infrastructure development is very important for the country. Now, maritime infrastructure is both time intensive and capital intensive, and has to be thought out over a long-term plan. It is not something that can be created overnight. If you see the Vadhavan port itself, phase 1 will end in 29 and phase 2 will end in 2039. That's still 15 years away. That's the kind of planning that has to be done. Now, in 2015, when the Sagarmala program was launched, it was meant to be a 20-year program up till 2035, which identified the kind of port requirements that India will have over the next so many years. Now, with the economy accelerating, obviously those targets are also going to be revised upwards. So it's very, very important that we understand this, and therefore the Vizhinham port, the Vadhavan port, and the mega port facility that's going to come up in Nicobar Islands is going to be extremely important for India from a maritime perspective, from an economic perspective, and from a security perspective.
Right.
Now, India so far did not have a single deep water port. So all our trade was transshipped either from Dubai or from Colombo or from Singapore. Now that firstly led to a lot of additional cost, and secondly a major deficiency in a maritime nation's maritime capability. By creating these deep water ports, and that is why in the video he said it was said that this will connect us directly to the INSTC and the IMEEC, the two very path-breaking maritime initiatives that India is taking for improving its global connectivity over the seas. That's the reason, because ships now from here will directly, with deep drafts and large ships with huge amounts of cargo, will be able to go directly now to the IMEEC and the INSTC without having to go to a transshipment port to transfer cargo to a bigger ship. So India is embarking on this transformation as a maritime nation at the right time, in accordance with its large economic targets which it has set for itself.
Okay.
And I think it's long overdue, and I'm glad it's happening now.
Okay.
I'll come to shipbuilding later, because that's the second aspect of this which I wanted to discuss, which you had alluded to earlier.
Okay, all right. Thank you for giving us this. This is encapsulating this entire journey, maritime journey for India, which it has at this point of time finally taken. Sudhir Krishna also on the telecast with me. He's the former Secretary, Urban Development, Chairman, Committee of Standards for Smart Cities. Now, how integral does it become to create smart cities around our naval ports, such as the Vadhavan port that has now come up? It is going to be a huge gestation period for this. Wisenham port, that is one of the big firsts that India has gotten along Arabian Sea in Kerala. How do we move forward in building smart cities around these ports?
Well, I think such developments do provide opportunities and necessitate also creation of, smart habitats. Definitely the influx of economic activities at a higher level, huge amount of trade will happen, and, by sending goods and handling goods, and along with that, lot of activities on the shores also, hinterland area also, lot of activities will happen. So therefore, a lot of development has to take place in the habitat sector also. Otherwise, there will be a mess on the shores. You get the goods, but there are people who live, and there, anywhere you go and see outside the port area, you find lot of mess in most places, and therefore it is necessary to have a systematic planning for development of the foreshore area. Of course, environmental issues are there, which I think it will be discussed in course of the discussion today. But the foreshore area, proper sustainable development is very much required. Smartness is definitely required, but sustainability of the habitats is also required. The people who are there, it should not happen that only some pockets or some sparks of smart townships are there and rest of the area is neglected. Then the gap between the developed smart townships and the remaining habitats should not widen. That danger is also there, and that has social impact also. So a smart city concept is very much required, but sustainable habitat concept should also be nurtured along with that.
Right.
It's crucial.
Right, absolutely, because an announcement that was made by Minister Vaishnav in talking about, to the tune of 30,000 crore rupees that has been allocated for 12 more industrial hubs that are going to be created, the smart cities that are going to be created across the length and breadth of the country. Interestingly, of course, Andhra Pradesh and Bihar are also going to get this funding to build the smart cities in their states. Okay, Dr. Sharad Kohli also on the telecast with me, and Sharad Kohli, how do we look at, bringing together, aligning all our assets in a bid to attain the 8% GDP growth mark? We are at this point in time eyeing that these initiations after the completion of the gestation periods will provide the goals that we want to achieve. They are going to be fulfilling them by 2047. Do you think that period of about 20-25 years is going to be enough to build these ports and reach the level of any matching any international port, whether it is Singapore or Colombo or any part of the world?
Good evening, Megha. Good evening to my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers. If you look at the total merchandise export or merchandise trade being done from India, we are currently at about $775 billion, And, traditionally, this used to be dominated by services. But what has happened over the last 3-4 years, that the merchandise has caught up and caught up to almost hit 50%. Which means if I convert this to numbers, 350 to $400 billion of merchandise export is happening now, thanks to Make in India, thanks to a lot of indigenization, thanks to defense exports, thanks to so many things which have happened, over the last few years, particularly a decade. Although the last 3-4 years have been transformational for this country. Now, if you want to cater to this kind of scale of or volume of bilateral trade, well, ports become a must. 7,000 kilometers is the approximate size of the Indian coastal line. We are a peninsula and we are surrounded by water from 3 sides. So it's extremely important. And currently, the ports we have, the port which Mr. Adani built, and there are some of the others, they are not capable of handling the kind of volumes we are looking at. If we are looking at about $2 trillion of merchandise export in the next 5 to 6 years, that's what we are aiming at. I'm just being very pinpointed now. I'm not giving you the broad economic parameters. I'm trying to make them more specific to the topic today. So if you're looking at $2 trillion of bilateral trade, you need handling capacity. If we don't have handling capacity, there is nothing much you can do. You will have your exporters and importers complaining at all the time that my shipment gets stuck. I have to wait for so long. The docking of the ship becomes a problem, and so on and so forth. All sorts of logistic issues, custom clearance, and so on and so forth. There are multiple issues which are faced by the international exporters and importers. Now, if you look at the broader picture as far as economy is concerned, the contribution of Maharashtra, as you said in your initial in your opening remarks, 1% being added to the GSDP. I was hearing the video content. Sorry, it was in the video content. Now, if you look at the Maharashtrian GDP, it's about $450 billion. So simply Maharashtra. So there are 2 aspects of it. 1, Maharashtra gets benefited as a state. 2, this port caters to rest of the country. As Commodore Anil said, 90% of our international trade happens through water. Not everybody can afford air travel, air freight. So 90% happening through water, which means that this port is going to cater to as far as Kanyakumari, as far as West Bengal, as far as Jammu and Kashmir. So, but per se, Maharashtra will benefit 1%. If I convert $450 billion to 1%, so only Maharashtra's takeaway would be, Megha, about $5 billion. I am rounding off the numbers. So that is the kind of gain with Maharashtra, notwithstanding the fact that 1.2 million people are going to get direct jobs out of it. The 1 crore indirect jobs, employment, which has been pointed out. Now, people might be wondering, how come 1 crore jobs? Because there's going to be logistics, there's going to be transport, there's going to be movement, there's going to be, the entire economy building around a port. A small development happening besides the highway creates so much of economics. And you can imagine a $9 billion investment, how much of leverage that can generate. It's massive leverage, so people are going to get employment. I think a whole economy will build around. In fact, you can make a whole city out of that port, a separate city out of the port. So that is the kind of leverage with the country and the state of Maharashtra is going to get. And a very important point, Megha, the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. I think there is a bit of an aberration right now because of the tensions in West Asia. But India is already committed to the G20 commitment made. India is already, I think the rest of the nations across the corridor have got the message that India is serious about it. India has taken a big step and it is now their turn to see that this corridor flow of traffic is smooth enough and it becomes functional sooner than later, Megha.
Okay, all right. Dr. Jayajit Bhattacharya, you are talking about the 25-year plan that India and Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the BJP government have encapsulated, have had the vision to build. There is going to be a lot of work that is going to be required. This is just the start. Now, there are foundation stones that are being put up. Whether we talk about the deep sea port in Vadhavan, that has been now inaugurated today, and whether we talk about the Vadhavan port that has been set up in, which is going to be run by Adani group of companies. Again, the question about could this action have been taken earlier? would we have been in a position that we are now expecting and hoping and in an ambitious plan wanting to reach in 2047, that time period of 25 years could have been reduced?
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point that you're bringing up. Why didn't we do it earlier? This was a proposal that first came up in the previous century and then was shot down because of petty politics and excuses being given. Let's look at the larger implication. We will soon be the third largest economy in a couple of years' time. Not a single port of ours is there in the top 35 ports globally. Even after this port comes up, it will probably be the sixth largest port as per today's ranking. And which are the top five? Out of the top five, the four are Chinese and one is Singaporean. So you can imagine that if we would like to, if we have the ambitions to be one of the largest economies in the world, or the top three economies in the world, clearly we would need an enormous amount of port capacity. Fortunately, we are blessed with a very strategic location. As Commodore Singh was mentioning, we obviously are significantly dependent on the oceans. But also that is an advantage for us because both on the eastern side and the western side, we control a significant portion of global trade, if only we develop the infrastructure. We are already hearing murmurs from those who set up their manufacturing in India, moving away from China, that the infrastructure is not good enough in spite of the frantic build-up of infrastructure in the last 10 years. So clearly we should have started much earlier than last 10 years. And these are lost time that we have not built up these infrastructure, and that is showing up as a bottleneck right now. Also, if we set up this port, do keep in mind that we've got another port that India owns in the Middle East, which is the Chabar port, which is being significantly not used. It is minimally being used. So once this port comes up and the other ports start functioning to the design that they have been made, then because of the international north-south transportation corridor which goes through Chabar, the Chabar port will also start becoming significantly more functional than what it is now. Mm-hmm. So it is just Maharashtra we are talking about. We are talking about India's spread across the geography that we would like to have our influence on. Also, the other point is that once we put up such large infrastructure, keep in mind that with a 21-meter draft, this is one of the deepest ports we have. The other one is a Gangavaram port, but that's about it. Other ports globally have much deeper draft, and what that really means is that with a deeper draft, we can have much bigger vessels coming in. Yeah. And if much bigger vessels come in, then you can bring in raw materials at a much cheaper cost without doing transshipments. And therefore, one can actually set up a large amount of manufacturing around the port itself. And so the port towns that you are mentioning should also be catering to manufacturing facilities. Unfortunately, in India, for some strange reason, we treat manufacturing and commercial activities as second-class citizens. We don't provide them with as good a connectivity, as good roads, as good drainage as we provide for human habitat. I don't know really why, but they are really the engines of growth. If you go to any of the industrial places, the roads and stuff are quite broken down. So I hope as this port comes up, the focus on the manufacturing part of the port becomes as much of is taken up with the same alacrity as the port itself, because you can bring in cheap raw materials, quickly process it, and then send it back out, becoming one of the economic giants.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take a perspective from Commodore Anil Jai Singh about the other side of the coin, which is the strategic interest in security and safety of our ports in the country, and how important does it become when we take an overall picture and our adversaries. And when I talk about adversaries, I'm directly pointing out at China, because when it decides to build these military ports, these sea bases that it wants to explore and exploit in Bangladesh and in Sri Lanka. You take a look at the Southern American countries, and also a number of these seaports that have been set up in Africa. How is India at this time at a very competitive edge with China, or do we have a long way to go?
Well, frankly speaking, at the moment, in the Indian Ocean, India is and will remain the predominant power for some time to come. Maritime power. There is no question about that. if you notice over the last 4 years that we've had this very tense border standoff, along the land border with China, and despite a permanent Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean, the PLA Navy has steered well clear of the Indian Navy because notwithstanding its size and its capability, it still does not have the capacity to take on the Indian Navy in the Indian Ocean. Now, China is expanding its Navy at a phenomenal pace. They're building 20 to 25 warships a year. So they are going to have a 430 ship Navy by 2030. And we can definitely expect a permanent Chinese naval presence, a large Chinese naval presence in the Indian Ocean. I think the Indian Navy and the Indian security establishment is very cognizant of that. Our naval shipbuilding plans, our Coast Guard plans are taking this into account, and we are developing capabilities to counter any such attempt by China to dominate the Indian Ocean, meaning that we will always try and retain the competitive edge or the maritime edge in the Indian Ocean. Now, when it comes to protecting our maritime infrastructure, this becomes even more important. But maritime security, today every activity in the oceans is underpinned by security, whether it's energy, whether it's food, whether it's resources, whether it's non-traditional threats, whether it's even effects of climate change. All of them are underpinned by security. So maritime security remains the primary activity which we have to focus on. And infrastructure like these ports actually enhances our maritime security in many ways because we become independent we don't have to be dependent on anybody else for either our transshipment requirements or scared that somebody else will be able to intercept our sea lines of communication, because now that the ports are in our waters, we control the sea lines of communication. So I don't think, in fact, the more robust our maritime infrastructure is, the stronger we become as a maritime nation. And that is something we must keep in mind. As far as China is concerned or our Western adversary is concerned, I don't think we should worry about these ports becoming vulnerable, because we would have catered to the fact that yes, they would probably come in their crosshairs of these countries, and we would be adequately prepared to defend them. Absolutely. If you notice, the world's largest greenfield refinery, the Ambani refinery in Jamnagar, is a stone's throw away from Pakistan. That did not prevent the Ambanis from building it, because they were confident of the fact that we are capable of securing and protecting and our own infrastructure, our critical infrastructure in the country. So I think we should not worry too much about the security dimension. We cannot ignore it, but I think we are cognizant of it and we are addressing it.
Absolutely. Okay. So, Sudhir Krishna, would you like to, value add to what Commodore Anil Jay Singh has said, that, India's strategic interests, maritime security are in directly cohesive when it comes to our commercial maritime operations, building of seaports and transshipment ports, and also when these areas get more and more inhabited by way of smart cities, there is an ecosystem in itself that is being built around. It only further reinstates in India's borders being secured, also deters enemy states or states who are at this point of time aggressively at this, whether we take a look at the ASEAN nations, and there has been aggressiveness that is shown by the Chinese. They have been, taking over their ports, taking over their maritime territories. Would this also then avert any sort of possible interferences or aggressive tactics by enemy nations?
Well, I don't know. I can't say much about more than what the Commodore has said just now. I think I would like to endorse what he has said. I'm not able to, say anything because he has put it very well. But on ecosystem you mentioned, I think that's a very big challenge. And it's a big challenge because western coast is very fragile ecologically, right from, start from Gujarat, Kutch area and down up to the Kanyakumari, a very fragile area. So, and here the project is going to acquire land on the foreshore, hundreds of hectares. I suppose close to 1,000 hectares will be acquired for the project, taken away. And also, the around 1,500 hectares area will be reclaimed. 200 million cubic meters of sand will be taken out from Daman area to fill the ocean for reclaiming the area. So ecologically, it is going to be a very serious challenge. And I hope it will be handled well, number one. Number two, there definitely will be huge points of several points of smart cities coming up, definitely, because high value, investment will come, and a lot of people with a lot of money, projects and investment and industrial and commercial establishment will come, and definitely. But unless we have a regional development in focus, unless we develop the region properly, the whole of the taluka, that is this ecologically sensitive area, a very careful planning is required, and we should not get impressed too much by some here and there smartness. Regional planning is absolutely critical. Absolutely, otherwise it will be a total mess. It will be a mess. And also, the road network will come. It has to come. It is good that they have planned for connectivity of road and rail network also along with this port, which is a must. So habitat planning is critical. Environmental planning is very critical. What kind of waste it will generate, what kind of environmental pollution it will generate in terms of construction, waste, and construction waste in terms of impact on the biota, the sea flora and fauna, whatever is under the sea, all those things, the huge dredging of several kilometers, more than 10 kilometers of wall will be constructed to divert or regulate the ocean currents. These are not mean things in terms of ecology. So habitat planning, environmental planning will make it sustainable, with smartness. All right, smartness has to come to get the best in terms of time and in terms of resources invested. It has to come, but I'm sure proper planning is also going on. They have done that. Environmental impact assessment has been done. It needs to be publicized properly. Okay. How the negative impact are being countered by the project in design.
Okay, all right. Quickly coming to you, Dr. Shahid Kaule, now how do we progress from here? Now we have built the smart cities, we are setting up our ports, we've also talked about the Gati Shakti program, and within Gati Shakti there is Sagarmala that is also happening. There are roads, kilometers of, hundreds and thousands of kilometers of highways that at this point of time have been constructed. They are in the process, they are in progress. How do you achieve the milestone that we have put ourselves to achieve, which is an ambitious goal? Will this all then be the primary stepping stones to achieve it?
Well, I would say, Megha, it's work in progress. We are heading in the right direction. There's a lot to be done. If you ask me to list down what else needs to be done, the list is very long. I would probably need another half an hour to describe as to what is left. But sticking to this, my own calculation says we did a test run on the Mumbai port, the traditional Mumbai port, for a plastic molding shipment which came a couple of years ago. To transport it to Northeast, when we calculated the cost of transport, we were far less competitive than China and some of the other countries. So to cut down the cost and to cut down the land travel, we need at least 5 more such ports, is my calculation. One of the ports has to be in West Bengal, a port of decent size with a similar kind of capacity. One needs to be near Andhra. One Kerala port needs to be, updated. And one can be nearer to between I would say near Karnataka and down Kerala. We need 5 more ports to be able to augment our resources, to be prepared for the developed India, to be prepared for India becoming manufacturing engine of the world, to be prepared for India leading the pack of bilateral trade countries, and to be prepared to beat China, for that matter, Megha.
Okay, all right. Then Dr. Jaydeep Bhattacharya, you spoke about industrialization, which has to be at the helm when India aims to achieve the goal that it has set out to achieve. Now here, when you talk about, there's also been a report that has been put out by the World Bank talking about the middle income countries that get stuck and are not able to go to the next step. And what are the threats that India might face in the stumbling blocks and impediments that have to be overcome, and how again does this shipbuilding program that has been taken forward by the government, by the country, is going to help cross these impediments, these challenges?
Sorry, yeah. So the challenge of being stuck in a middle income income economy is something which has many more dimensions, and we are a little far away from being there. We are nowhere close to being a middle income economy as of now. And you already heard Dr. Kohli mentioning all the upgrades that we need in our journey to becoming a middle income economy. So first is to ensure that we reach there. We are a lower income economy, a lower middle income economy. We need to move to an upper middle income economy, and we'll clearly move to an upper middle income economy. But the problem is getting stuck at that level. But to even reach there, we need a frantic, continuous upgrade of infrastructure. And as I mentioned a little while ago, that and as you rightly pointed out, that should have been something started 20, 25 years back. But at least fortunately, we started it about 10, 12 years back, and that's a good progress. But to reach there, we need to make sure that we continuously have manufacturing coming up. See, the reason why we get stuck one of the reasons why we get stuck at a upper middle income economy level is because we soon run out of jobs. The skill development does not happen. That again is an investment that we need to do now. So if we need to ensure that we get $80,000 per annum as an average income, which is what the average income of US is, then clearly there are people who are earning significantly more, for which very deep skills are needed. Are we upgrading our skills? In fact, do we even have skills for being a manufacturing economy? And those are challenges we'll be facing. So there's a lot of unbottling that we need to do, including the port infrastructure that Dr. Kohli just mentioned. Even the Vadhavan port is not enough at this stage if we really want to grow to the third largest economy that we're talking about.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the government is taking expeditious steps that we do have the infrastructure that we need.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.